And good morning from beautiful Powell River, BC, here on a gorgeous day. And I can't think of a better time to pull out a bunch of the camping gear, make sure it all works, and talk a little bit about camping stoves. Do you need one? Yes. Do you like coffee? Then yes, you need one. Let's talk about that. Okay, so stoves. There's a lot of different types of stove out there. I've used probably all of them over the years. Started out with a Whisperlite International for MSR back in the 80s. Bought when I was in high school, and used that for a long time while camping, canoeing, backpacking. And then moved on to the jet boil when that came out. The first gen jet boils, pretty poor flame adjust, but they worked great. Super hot, super fast, and very clean, easy to use. And then I got second generation jet boil. Used that for a bunch of time. That was great too. And then I got into bike packing. So if you're not familiar with bike packing, it is long distance backcountry overland travel on a bicycle. So suddenly every single ounce and square inch becomes important. So that's when I started going to a few little stoves. These all run on methyl hydrate. First one I did was actually the simplest one and the cheapest one. It is a pop can stove that I built. There's tons of plans on the internet. Look up YouTube, pop can stove, beer can stove, and they work fantastic, and they weigh literally absolutely nothing and pack down to just about nothing either. And then after that, I believe I tried this one for a little while. Again, methyl hydrate. Stove goes, or the pot goes right on top of it. Flames come out the side. Again, not bad. Didn't use it very, very long. Got this little guy. Plates fold up flat. It's actually titanium, so that's pretty slick. You do need those for the pot to go on, just because of the way the flames come out the bottom. So use that one for quite a while as well. But this is basically my ultralight setup that I used on the bicycle, and I still use on the motorcycle if it's just me and I'm not doing a lot of cooking. If I'm just doing a quick overnight, want to stay light, I go with this. Another little methyl hydrate stove. This one's neat because it actually holds the fuel in it. You can actually just load it and carry it that way, rather than carrying a separate bottle with the methyl hydrate inside. I like it. It's, again, if you're just going to go out and cook like a meal or coffee for the morning, that's all you need to carry. That's kind of nice. Theoretically, it's got a little bit of a simmer ring. In practice, it works okay. But this is based off a fairly classic design that's been around for over 100 years. Made of brass, still pretty light and compact as far as things go. Yeah, let's maybe light one of these guys up. Again, because of the way that the rings are on this one, you can't just put a pot on top of it. So I've got our ultra fancy pot stand here. That works just like, as you can see, it's extremely stable. We'll just close that a little bit tighter. There we go. And then away you go, just like that. So, methyl hydrate. One of the nicest thing about this is basically you can find it in the paint department of any little hardware store, corner store, in every little small backcountry town you can possibly imagine. So as far as getting fuel goes, it's pretty easy to top it up. All you gotta do is pour a little bit in there. Grab our lighter and light it up. Now, the biggest trick with methyl hydrate is you have a very hard time telling if it's lit or not. So that is lit. You can only tell basically by feeling the heat. It is an invisible flame, so you have to be a little bit careful with it as a fuel source. Basically what's happening right now, this is double walled, and it is going through the bottom and preheating and turning the liquid fuel into a vapor, in which case then we're going to start seeing some flame coming out here rather shortly. So again, nice, small, lightweight way to carry all your different stoves. If you don't need to cook, most of these are basically just for heating water. So if you're making coffee, making soup, they work fantastic. If you're actually trying to cook a meal on it, I do make soup in this. It is not the easiest thing in the world. Sometimes you gotta manually control the heat by lifting it up and down. You'll see a number of things here in titanium. Titanium is a fantastic material. It is light, it is strong, it is durable. You can throw it in the fire, you can cook right over open flame. It's pretty tough to beat, except for the price. It's not the cheapest thing in the world, but it does work fantastic. And we're actually getting quite a bit of heat out of that guy now. So yeah, so if you wanted to start boiling water, there you go. Pot stand. Your mileage may vary, but you can always create whatever pot stand you like. That might work a little bit better than that. But it really doesn't take very long for this to you can actually start seeing it there. It's heating things up. But we are not going to sit here and wait for the water to boil on this stove because we're just not. Nice thing about being on a motorcycle is you have gloves, so hot things you can grab quite easily. Now, you may wonder, oop, yep, that's hot. How do you put it out? Well, you kind of don't. You put a little bit in there, you let it, you use what you need to, and then it goes out by itself, or you can snuff it out, just like that, with whatever you've got handy. Yeah, not too hot. So yeah, that's basically methyl hydrate can stoves in a nutshell. Again, quite functional, easy to use, and I do go back and forth between that and a bigger stove, depending on if I'm by myself, if it's one night, 2 nights, when I'm planning on eating. If I'm eating out a lot and just making coffee, this is definitely the setup I'll take because it really doesn't fit into anything bigger than just my mug. Now, the other setup that I use quite regularly, especially if it's myself and somebody else, Miss Velocity and I, if we're going out camping for an overnight, this is what I'll bring because we can make a meal in it for the two of us. Or if I'm doing a multi-day and I don't really know what's going on, if I'm going for a week, I'll often take something like this too because, again, maybe cooking meals, maybe not cooking meals, better be prepared than not. So again, titanium pot set. I like this one. It's sort of a great size. It does have a nice set of handles on it, as well as a bell handle. So you can actually hang this from something over a fire if you wanted to. Works pretty well. Again, if you get a glove on there, you can grab that out of a burning fire as well. And it also fits the stove completely. So what we have here is my original MSR Whisperlite International that I bought in 1986 in high school. And I've done some maintenance on it over the years. It does have the shaker needle in it now. You used to have to clean the jet out manually with a little cleaner tool. This, you just have to give it a couple shakes and it cleans up the jet. Now, especially important because we're actually not going to be using a white gas like you would normally use on a stove like this, but we're actually going to use gasoline. So the big advantage to the Whisperlite International is that it will burn a lot of different fuels. So typically, most people with the stove would use a white gas, a naphtha, Coleman fuel, same sort of thing, which burns pretty well, burns pretty clean. But I don't. I burn good old-fashioned gasoline. So the biggest advantage to burning gasoline is it's already with me on part of the fuel for the bike. So if I run out of stove fuel, I've got gasoline on the bike I can use to cook with, and if I run out of gasoline on the bike, I've got stove fuel that I can add to the tank. So I do have extra fuel as part of this as my sort of final reserve if I get into the backcountry and don't plan my stops very well or things go sideways. Biggest downside to gasoline is it doesn't burn very cleanly. It's a dirty fuel, and you'll see that when we fire this up, it does create a lot of flame, a lot of soot, until things are actually primed. The liquid fuel burns dirty. The vapor, once the heating tube is all nice and warm, it does burn clean. And one of the things a lot of people ask is, well, does your food taste like gas? It's like, well, no, it does not. Once it's actually in a vaporized form, the fuel does burn clean, and you can't taste it. So that's always something people keep asking about a gasoline stove. So it is a rather classic, compact design that does work on a compression system on the tank. Stored for a while. There we go, just like that. So to use the stove, you basically have to pressurize the tank, release liquid fuel into the priming cup on the bottom, light it up, make it a nice big fireball, preheat it into a vapor form, and then after that, you're off to the races. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There is a recommended number of pumps, but basically I go until I've got some pressure, because of course that'll change depending on how much fuel you've got in the tank. So what we're looking for is a little bit of fuel down to that cup, and once you see liquid fuel down there, you've got more than enough. Make sure you turn it all the way back off, and this is where it gets dramatic. And when you've got some wind like this, you can move things around a little bit. And this is that dirty part I was referring to. It is rather dramatic. It is rather dirty. It is just gasoline burning off. It's not a big deal. But what we're looking for here is for the priming cup. The priming cup to preheat the heating tube, and once that is hot, then we're going to start seeing some actual flame coming out. I did use a little bit more fuel apparently than I needed to, but we are definitely getting there. So once it starts actually dying down a little bit, you can hear the sound change. It's starting to vaporize a little bit. If you don't see any flames coming at the top yet, you can always give it a little shot from the bottom. Oop, click out. This has been in storage for a while. I haven't been out camping as much as I like this season, and there we go. Now you can see the flames coming at the top. There's definitely a little bit of art to this. It's not just a quick light and you've got cooking flames. And you kind of feather your fuel a little bit until everything's nice and warm. Now, I may be making this look a lot harder than I need to, but like I say, there's definitely an art form to the Whisperlite. And now you can hear why it has its name. Because it is unbelievably quiet, right? It is full-on jet engine once it gets going, but just like that. And it is still one of the hotter stoves going as well. Boils water pretty quick. We're not going to have a watch pot waiting to boil here, but you get the idea. We could do a timing test somewhere along the line, but we're not going to do that today. But as you can see already, like, we're boiling. It really doesn't take very long. Now, they're not known for their simmering ability. The newer version of this has a much more finable control knob, where these ones are pretty much full. You can get them down low a little bit, so you can't really control the flame very well. There is a diffuser plate that you can get for these. It does help distribute the heat a little bit more on a larger pot, but you can see you can get it. There we go. We're down quite a bit lower there now, and then you can cook that way. So you can bring your water to a boil, throw in your ramen noodles, bring it down, let it simmer a little bit, and then when you're done, it is a simple off. Brings some excess fuel, and that is that. That is your Whisperlite International burning on gasoline. So I hope you learned a little something about stoves, at least the stoves that I've used over the years. Is there a perfect stove? Probably not. Is there one that is absolutely the right stove for every situation? Of course not, which is why I have a quiver. So I can pull the right thing out of the pile and take it on whatever trip I'm doing. There's pros and cons to all of them. Jet boils are fantastic until you try to find a fuel canister in the middle of nowhere. They're also not the smallest and lightest, but the biggest issue I find on longer trips is finding fuel. Where the methyl hydrate you can get in pretty much any sort of hardware store in most small towns anywhere, like a general store where they've got a little bit of everything. Methyl hydrate is a very common thing to have in the back somewhere in the paint section, so you can get fuel just about anywhere. And of course, with gasoline on the Whisperlite, it's you've already got it with you, and you can get it everywhere. You know, if you can get fuel for your bike, which you've got to do a couple times a day sometimes, you can get fuel for your stove. Of course, the added benefit to that is your stove fuel can be used to get yourself out of trouble if your main tank is dry and empty. So again, Whisperlite may not be the easiest to use. It's definitely the most finicky of the bunch. Jet boils are by far the easiest of the bunch. Any pop can stove or a little methyl hydrate stove is simple, it's light, it's clean, it burns relatively hot, but there's no heat or temperature control at all. It's just on or off. At least with Whisperlite, you still have a little bit of simmer control. So if you're doing a big pot of ramen, you can actually bring it to a boil, throw the stuff in, turn it down without it all overflowing down the sides, and eat your soup. So hope you learned a little bit today about stoves. If you get more questions, comment below, send me a message, and of course, if you like these videos, like, subscribe, so on, yada yada, and so forth. Give me some feedback and let me know what else you want to see. I've got more videos coming.